What if the greatest performance enhancer isn't a pill, a device, or a protocol, but the air you're breathing right now? What if the quality of that air is silently shaping your sleep, your focus, your aging, even your future? My guest today is someone who lives at the intersection of wellness, innovation, and purpose. Helen Christoni is a health and wellness expert, educator, and a seasoned executive with over 2 decades of experience leading transformational brands. She's currently the Vice President of Business Development and Partnerships at Ideal Living, the force behind AirDoctor, AquaTru, and AromaTru, where she helps connect people worldwide to wellness tech that truly matters. At Ideal Living, the team firmly believes in wellness tech that serves a greater purpose, recognizing that access to pure air and clean water is a fundamental right for everyone. At our own Gateway Clinic in Santa Monica, we've seen firsthand the impact of using AirDoctor, especially in the wake of the California wildfires. Helen's brilliance doesn't stop at business. She's a passionate athlete who's run the Boston Marathon 5 times, completed three 100-mile ultra marathons, and this gave me the chills. She and her husband became two of only 16,000 people on Earth to complete all 6 world marathon majors, choosing to run Tokyo, Berlin, and Chicago all in the same year after one of the hardest seasons of their lives. This is a conversation about resilience, breath, and the unseen forces that either deplete us or heal us.
Superhumanize. Accelerated evolution.
Helen, welcome to the Superhumanized podcast. I am truly so thrilled to have you here today. And as someone who's deeply invested in optimizing every aspect of health, not just personally, but professionally, I want to share that we recently started using the AirDoctor at our Gateway Clinic in Santa Monica. And it's been really incredible, especially after the aftermath of the wildfires recently here in Los Angeles, in California. The difference in air quality has really been palpable, not only right after, but even many weeks after this actually happened. And I was incredibly moved. I mentioned this before we hit record. I was just so incredibly moved by your company's generous donation. It was over, I believe, $325,000 worth of air purifiers to
Yeah.
communities in need. This is such a powerful example of conscious leadership and action. And I was just bowled over this level of generosity, responsiveness during a crisis that really speaks to something deeper than just running a business. And before we dive deeper into the science and the innovation behind AirDoctor, I'd love to ask you, what drives you personally as a leader in the wellness space? And was there a defining moment, perhaps, or an inner conviction that shaped how you approach conscious leadership?
Yeah, it does. So thank you so much for Ariana for having me on. And my name is Helen Christoni, and I'm Senior Vice President over here at AirDoctor and also Ideal Living. And I do have a personal story that really has inspired me as it relates to wellness and not taking any shortcuts with my health. And with me, as I was a victim of like my own environmental kind of toxic exposure. I'm a lifelong athlete, and I found myself in my early 40s. I started breaking. I broke my left pelvis, and then shortly thereafter, I broke my right pelvis, and then I broke my ribs. And I was diagnosed with, oh, what's it called? I've gotten over it now. So I've severe osteoporosis. And so I was diagnosed with severe osteoporosis very early. I was an avid runner. I was a diet everything skinny. Like I said, super healthy, I thought. And I got handed the severe osteoporosis diagnosis. And I was like, what is happening? And so also during that time, I found out that I was postmenopausal. I was on birth control. I didn't have my period. I was an avid runner, and I had no idea that I'd gone through perimenopause. And then now I was postmenopausal. So I got hit with this 44-year-old osteoporosis, postmenopausal, and I didn't even know what was happening. So I really had to take a look at my life. I was an executive in the beauty business, and I have to say I was really part of the problem. I was working with fragrances, and basically I was inhaling all these toxins all day, every day, and my health really suffered for it. And I had to make big changes in my life, and that's what I did. One of the things I did is I reached out to Peter Spiegel, the CEO and founder of AirDoctor, and I asked him for help. And because he's a mentor of mine, and he said immediately start purifying your air and purifying your water. And so I started purifying my air, and I made major changes in my diet, my lifestyle, the air that I breathe, the water that I drink. And since then, now I'm 55. I just had my 55th birthday, and I no longer have severe osteoporosis. Unfortunately, I'm still postmenopausal. I couldn't reverse that. I'm very healthy. I've gone on to run marathons, ultra marathons, all the things. And so that is really what's made me so passionate about educating people on foundational choices they can make for their health.
Thank you for sharing this, Helen. And it's just an incredible story. Just as an outsider looking in, I cannot even begin to imagine how grueling that must have been. Breaking your right pelvis, the left pelvis.
That's crazy.
Straight up. Oh my goodness. And one of the things that really struck me when I learned more about you is, and you mentioned it briefly and very humbly, your truly extraordinary athletic journey. You completed, correct me if I'm wrong, but you completed 3 100-mile ultra marathons and all 6 of the world marathon majors, including, was it 3 last year?
Yeah, I did. I ran 3 marathons. I ran 3 of the majors last year. I did Germany, Chicago, and Tokyo last year, just to check them off my list and finish. I've also been lucky enough to run the Boston Marathon several times. And this is all post that diagnosis. So I was able to really get my health together and do some pretty amazing things physically. And yeah, it's funny that you talk about the 300-mile endurance runs. People just don't typically even believe me. They look at me and they're like, she doesn't look like an ultra runner. Sometimes I don't even talk about it. But yeah, I've done 3 pretty hard mountain races and the training that's gone with them. And really, I think that when you do that sort of athleticism and you're training in that capacity, nothing's more important than the air that you breathe when you really think about it, especially during recovery. Because when you're breathing pure air, you're really, it takes a little, correlates with your body's inflammation, its recovery, all these things. And being able to breathe pure AirDoctor air is definitely a plus and has helped me a lot.
Oh, 100%. And I want to do a deep dive into the science of all of this in just a moment, Helen, because something that I'd like to hear a little bit more from you about is what you're describing, this kind of endurance, that's not just physical, it's mental, it's spiritual, and it's also deeply intentional. What drives you to push limits like that?
Honestly, I'm a real driven person, and I have this kind of side of crazy that I need to really satisfy this just drive I have in me by challenging myself. I've always been this way. And I think when my husband and I got married, he was a marathon runner, and he was like, I wanted to do the Paris Marathon. And I can't do the Paris Marathon because I have Boston. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the Boston Marathon too. And so I had no idea how fast I had to run or what I needed to do, but I just did it. And so it's very mental. When you get into the long distances, my husband Tim is an avid runner, and he did several ultra marathons, and I would help him. I would crew him. I would be out there while he was running these races. And one day he said, why don't you sign up for one of these races? And I said, I know this course. It was Angeles Crest 100 here in Los Angeles, and I'll try. And I tried. I worked so hard for that race. The training is grueling. You're running 100-mile weeks for 12 weeks in a row. it's really just another level of ask for your body. And I don't know that I would do it again now, but I think having gone through that mental push, like once you get past, I think it's 65 or 70 miles, it's no longer physical. It's
Mm.
all mental, and keeping yourself hydrated and nourished and everything. It's really super strategic. And so I think that's why I really like the super long distances, is because of the strategy and the planning that goes into, and also the science. I'm a fairly petite person. And so to keep my 100 pounds running for 30 plus hours, sometimes it takes a lot of strategy and nutrition, hydration, and preparation. So I love it.
Yeah, it's truly phenomenal, Helen. And I'm curious, how has your relationship to resilience in athletics influenced your work as a leader in wellness? And how has it influenced your leadership, actually?
I think, I mean, it depends on who you ask on my team. Right. I think that really I have this get it done
Mhm.
finisher mentality. And I also think that nothing is impossible to me. And so when I'm faced with challenges, or my team is faced with challenges, we really try and find our way. And like there's always a way, is what I say. And so I think that my team and the people that I work with and I know in this space, like they know I have the capacity to really dig deep, and I do what I say and I say what I do. And so I think it really, you have to trust. You have to trust yourself. You have to trust your team, and you also have to trust your body. And I think trust is really the key. And also, I think as it comes to athleticism, you have to trust the training. Right?
Mm.
So you have to trust your training, and I definitely apply that to all the training and education that I do in the health and wellness space. I am a stickler for education, preparation, and training. I'm so committed. I do webinars monthly, and I share information very openly with people. And so I think that is really, training and preparation is one of the cornerstones of that's important to me as a leader.
Yes, and something else that really resonated with me with regard to your role as a leader. To me, it seems like you're not just a leader within health and wellness, but it is even deeper, mission driven. You have spoken about clean air and water, not just as wellness tools, but as fundamental human rights. And in a world where these essentials are often treated as privileges and they're privatized, that just really struck a chord with me. And it seems to be a subcurrent with everything you do, possibly also system shifting towards greater equity, access, and empowerment.
Yeah, I think that when I started talking with Peter, the CEO of Ideal Living here, who's the founder of AirDoctor, and I asked him, like, I didn't want to be in the beauty business anymore. And so I asked him, did he have any consulting for me? And with me, when I started learning about pure air, the science, the health implications if you don't have pure air, and I started thinking about just this knowledge base that, athletes, biohackers, but also moms
Mm.
did not know, and that people just weren't talking about it. And I felt very compelled to start having a very social conversation about indoor air and just what kind of havoc it can wreak on your body, especially after my own situation. It's not easy to recover from two broken pelvises. And a whole year of my life got taken away from me in that recovery. And so just sharing just the impact of doing some foundational work in your home was very passionate to me, because if I could go back and undo some of the toxic burden that I had myself living in when I was in my 20s and 30s and early 40s, even, I would. If I knew about it, I could have made very simple changes in my life, and I could have changed maybe I wouldn't have gone through early menopause. Maybe I wouldn't have had severe osteoporosis had I not been inhaling fragrances and making these unhealthy choices. And it's just simple things that I really did. So sharing that with people is really so important to me because our mission here at Ideal Living is that everyone has the right to clean, pure air and water. And it doesn't have to be only for the elite. And so we really try to make affordable products that are easy, that take the guesswork out of things for you. And so that just everybody has access to pure air. It's so important.
Yes, and with regard also to the affordability, your products are top tier within my health and wellness and biohacker circles. Whenever we talk about clean air, for example, it's unequivocally the AirDoctor that comes up, and for what it actually does, the price point is very reasonable. And I want to circle back to something you brought up a little prior in our conversation. You talked about inflammation, and in biohacker circles, this is a huge focus of how important it is of reducing inflammation to enhance longevity. And I'd love to hear from you. What is your perspective on specifically chronic exposure to air pollutants? How do they contribute to systemic inflammation? And how does, for example, the air doctor mitigate this when we're able to place it indoors where most of us spend most of our time?
Sure. So there's definitely a correlation about like extended exposure to air contaminants and pollutants. And there's been studies and journals that have shown that it can actually weaken your immune system. And so your body can't repair. And so it's very like if you're very into performance and longevity and really setting up your body for success, like making sure you remove anything that can cause inflammation in your environment is super important. And we spend 80% of our time in our homes asleep. And it's when you're sleeping that your body is recovering. And then it's actually detoxing. So when you're sleeping, it's so important that you are breathing pure, fresh air so your body can really detox and recover. You want to make sure you are drinking pure air. And so I think it's really important that we know how much air we're actually inhaling and that we make sure it's pure as possible. Especially inflammation is just one of the biggest chronic problems in our society today. And anywhere that you can reduce inflammation in your body, you should through your diet, through the water that you drink, through the air that you breathe, through the fitness things that you choose to do. And so, super important that we're all focusing on that. And then, like any air pollution, really triggers oxidative stress in the body. And we just want to make sure that we're breathing the purest air possible. So, we're not adding to that. And our indoor air pollution, people just everything that we're bringing into our homes is polluting the air. And so when you really look around, like I'm sitting here in my office and the carpet on the floor and the shades that's here, like all the, who knows, like I have flowers all over my office. Who knows what they've been sprayed with? And so we are really a victim of what's in our environment. And so making sure that you're purifying the air, changing the air in the room several times an hour is key to really reducing that exposure.
100% Helen. And I have also just in the recent years become fully aware of the paint on the walls, the furniture, the plants that we bring in to beautify our home. Who knows what they've sprayed with, as you so aptly noted. Pieces of art, the flooring.
Everything.
Once you really look into it, it can drive you insane. So thank goodness we have good solutions for that to make it better or even completely purify it. Can you tell us about some of the contaminants, the pollutants that are in the air that would surprise most people? And the analogy that you used before was really great because we drink so much air. So what are actually some of the worst pollutants that many are simply not aware of? And that would be completely shocking.
Oh gosh, the one that comes to mind right now is really microplastics. Everyone is thinking about the microplastics in our water, and we are all like so tuned in to microplastics in our water and our cutting boards and our food containers, but they are in our air. And so we're breathing and we're inhaling these microplastics. And as we know, and research has shown that these microplastics are getting into our arteries, they're getting into our brains. Like they're messing with our fertility. Also, men, they're finding them in their penile tissue. We're talking about fertility issues with men, fertility issues with women, heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, all correlated with these microplastics. And so it's not just what you're drinking, it's also what you're inhaling. So making sure that you're removing microplastics from the air is really important. And people don't often correlate microplastics with the air that we're breathing. And when you think about everything that we're bringing into our homes, a lot of it is off gassing these microplastics. They're getting kicked up out of our carpets. We're just tracking this up when we open things, and it's all getting kicked up. Another thing that I think is really important that we all talk about is sure. You want to make sure in your air purifiers, like an AirDoctor, we have something called an Ultra-HEPA filter, which removes microns down to 0.003 microns. And that is really one of the most powerful hospital grade air purifier, like HEPA filters that you can get. But also the volatile organic compounds. And so everything and what we really learned, like here in LA, the LA fires were a tremendous tragedy. It was one of the biggest tragedies in my lifetime. But what it did do as far as educating the world on the air that we breathe is that these air quality index reports are not measuring things like volatile organic compounds, benzenes, petroleum, formaldehyde, all these things that are off gassing into our air, especially from a city fire. That's all coming into our house. And just in Los Angeles proper, let's talk about volatile organic compounds. This particulate matter can stay in our homes from 6 to 12 months, and it might go away when the wind blows, and then it rains, and then it gets kicked up again when they remediate. So we're going to be living with these volatile organic compounds in our air for a long time. And then also particulate matter from a disaster like this, they find particulate matter from fires that are around for 2 years inside people's homes. 2 years after the fire's been put out, people have within 100-mile radius. And this is something we all need to think about. And these volatile organic compounds that only a very dense carbon filter can remove is really important. So just having a HEPA filter isn't going to help you. All the stuff we're talking about, the paint and the cabinetry and the carpeting and flowers that have been sprayed with God knows what, and all these things we also need a really dense carbon filter to remove from our air. Yeah, microplastics, volatile organic compounds, really bad stuff.
Yes, and one thing is to think about one's own health, but there's particularly groups within the population that are especially susceptible to it, whether you are dealing already with some kind of an illness, the elderly and children who are still in their developmental stages, the brain, everything. So it's for me absolutely clear that providing clean air in the home environment is absolutely essential. You mentioned cognitive decline before, and I have also read that emerging research suggests a link between air quality and mental health outcomes. I have to do a deeper dive into that. Are you aware of particulars? Just curious. If
Oh,
are
yeah.
particular pollutants that influence mood disorders, or let's say like anxiety or depression, and
I think that clean air is really important for overall, and I have some notes here. Hold on. Clean air is really important for both mental clarity and mood regulation. And poor air quality is linked to increased anxiety, depression, and cognitive decline. So, a couple things, right? Like, you really want to make sure you're breathing pure, clean air. And I think I really have a really great example of this is like when you travel. You go to a hotel, and sometimes you stay in hotels that are built in the 60s. They don't have good ventilation. you feel like you're traveling, you're run down, you don't feel good, you feel heavy, and it could just be that the indoor air is so polluted that you're just not getting the oxygen that you need, the pure oxygen that you need to really detox your system. And for me personally, when I travel, because I work for the company, I'm so lucky to have air doctors in my office. I have air doctors in my bedroom. I have air doctors everywhere. And I also put a lot of them into the world. We're very lucky to have these air doctors. But when I travel to places and I stay in these hotels, it really affects everything. I feel like heavy. I don't feel well. It stresses me out. And it's just because I'm not breathing pure clean air. And it's not something that we make up. And so also like another good example is you get in an Uber, right? You get in an Uber, you're somewhere and they have one of those tree and you're going crazy. You're going crazy because of the tree and the like and the phthalates and the toxins coming from this heavy, overpowering, like, yeah, it does affect your mental health. It affects my mental health because I'm like, get me out of this car.
Yeah, it brings out the worst tendencies in me. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh gosh. You already mentioned some of the technology aspects before. I'm a nerd. I like to get into some more of the nitty-gritty. How does a modern air purifier like the AirDoctor utilize advanced filtration technologies, and what sets it apart on the market?
Oh gosh, I think a lot of things. So, first of all, let's just say we have a completely sealed system. So, a lot of these lesser expensive units that you find out in hardware stores, on Amazon, you can buy on TikTok, they're just not completely sealed. So, you want to make sure that your air purifier, like an air doctor, is a completely sealed system. What goes in, you want it to stay in and not come back out. That's number one. Number two, you want to make sure you have an Ultra-HEPA filter in it. So the Ultra-HEPA filter, we change it every 6 months in our machine. Ours perform 100 times better than the HEPA standard. So what does that mean? And so I'll break it down for you. So Air Doctor, our Ultra-HEPA filter is tested to remove particulate matter down to 0.003 microns. Now, a standard HEPA filter removes particulate matter down to zero point 0.3 microns, sometimes not even that when tested. Basically, our Ultra HEPA filter is 100 times more powerful than a HEPA filter. And that really, there's a lot of things that are much smaller than zero point 0.3 microns. And so let's go through them. You have mold, which can be down to 0.1. You have virus, which can be under zero point 0.1. There's PM 2.5, which is one of the most harmful contaminants that's put out by big pollution and things like that. And so removing particulates down to that level is crucial because anything smaller than PM 2.5 will break the blood barrier. It can travel through your body into your brain. And so it's really important when you're purifying that you have an Ultra HEPA filter that removes down to 0.003 microns, period. Now, in addition, we have our VOC carbon filter. We were just talking about that, like the benzenes and the formaldehydes and all these things that are in our air that are off-gassing from our homes. And also from city fires, pollution, car exhaust, etc. Everything comes into our house and it sits there. You need to have a very thick, dense carbon VOC filter, and it also has to have something in it called potassium permanganate. Now all I just want to pause and say carbon filters and air purifiers are not regulated. And so some companies say, oh, we have a carbon filter, but they'll spray carbon paint on it. They'll glue some carbon on it. They'll put the cheapest level of carbon in these filters just to say it has carbon, but you need to have a dense, like couple pound filter in these machines. And it has to have potassium permanganate because that's the only type of carbon that will really address formaldehyde. Why is that important? If you're a woman and you blow dry your hair or you do anything with any sort of like beauty chemical touching heat, it's more than likely it's off-gassing formaldehyde into your home. And so, like, you go and you have your hair colored, let's say, and look, a girl's gonna get their hair colored, but you go and you blow dry it, you hit it with heat every single time. I blow dry my hair, my air doctor goes off without a doubt. I blow dry, it goes off. Why? Because my hair and the chemicals that I have in my hair, it might not even be on the label, but when heat touches it, it creates it. And so this carbon, really important. And then lastly, we like to keep things simple at AirDoctor. We take the guesswork out of clean air. What I love most about our machines is that it has the indicator light on it. And something goes on in your house it doesn't like me blow drying my hair, perfect example. My AirDoctor turns red, it gets angry. And then it cycles through. It goes to orange when it's a little less angry while it's cleaning the air, and then to blue when the air is clean. And so you don't have to count anything. You don't need to think about anything. You don't need to check your phone. We have that option if you want to. But what I love about the Air Doctor is it really clues you into the behavior in your home that's causing the problems to begin with. So that's my favorite thing about the product, really. The efficacy of it, of course, the carbon, the HEPA, the Ultra-HEPA, it's all magic. But the indicator light and how you and your family can learn about what's happening, I think that's the best part of the product by far.
It is absolutely amazing. And a curiosity question, is there anything you foresee in the future also with the very rapid advancement of AI and integrating it into technologies? What do you foresee?
We're really looking into this AI future, and we're all very obsessed with AI, as I think the whole world is. We do have smart units, and so I would assume that we will be bringing AI into the smartness of our machines to really help people in their homes as technology advances. And so most of our units are available in a smart unit where you can really start to learn about exactly what's going on in your home through your phone. And I think incorporating AI to that is definitely something in the future. We're very excited about AI and the benefits it's going to have on all of our health.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that too, Helen. And I just wanted to pick up real quick on something you mentioned before. You mentioned the pollutant PM 2.5.
Yeah.
And this I want to highlight is actually because it's also a topic we briefly touched upon, the correlation between air pollution and cognitive decline. So this particular pollutant actually influences brain health and accelerates neurodegenerative processes, as far as I've gathered from scientific studies. Again, something we do not want to have floating around in our air.
Let's
Um,
double click on that. Do you want to double click on that a little bit? Because I think it's really important. If you live within 2 miles of a major highway, you're at risk for this. And so anybody that lives within a couple miles of a major highway, I have one right out here outside my window, which is a large part of our population here in the United States. What happens is the pollution comes from the cars, it gets trapped in our houses, and then it can really affect our cognition, children, their IQ scores, their ability to learn. On these young developing brains, it can be really bad for them. And so anybody that lives, forget wildfires, city fires, all these things, chemicals. If you just simply live within a couple miles of any major highway, you're at risk for this stuff. So it's not something that doesn't happen to a lot of people. It happens to most people. And I think that I've been talking about this lately after the Los Angeles fires. Since I started in my role at Ida Living, we've had several disasters where people have been, like, hundreds of millions of people in the United States of America have been put in a situation where their air quality has been hazardous. And I could go through them a little bit. First
Mhm.
one was the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment. 15 states' air qualities were affected by the East Palestine derailment. And when you're in a situation when you need an air purifier during a time like that, it is very difficult to get your hands on one. Then flash forward to the Canadian wildfires. And so I believe it's 120 million people's air quality was affected by the Canadian wildfires on the eastern seaboard. And it was crazy. Like, you could not get your hands on air purifiers. They don't deal with fires regularly. Like, isn't something you have in your apartment in New York City. People didn't know what to do. And then also we had the big chlorine spill in Georgia, the chlorine explosion last year. And then also recently, we had our two city wildfires here in Los Angeles. And when you think of the amount of people that were affected by all those natural disasters or unnatural disasters in the last several years, it's not that much time for so many people to be affected. And you and your family need to have an air purifier, a clean room to protect yourself from the environmental disasters that are happening in the community. And so I think that since the tragedy here in Los Angeles, I really have been educating about just have an air purifier in your home, at least one. Just so in the event of emergency, you and your family's covered. You were talking about our donations and our office, many of us were evacuated, myself included, during the Los Angeles wildfires. And our power was out in our offices here. And we just filled a truck. We filled a truck, we parked it across the street behind my shoulder. We got on social media and we started selling air purifiers at our cost. And we just put it on social media and we said, if you need an air purifier, we're parked here, come on down. And we also organized giveaways and donations, like you mentioned earlier, for victims of the Eden Fire. We put 20,000 units at cost into the community in a 10-day period. So it was crazy. We had people lying down the street and people were sending me pictures of my face on social media from their mom chats. It really, like, we were really on the ground very quickly, and day after day we brought in truck after truck just to make sure we could do something for our home. And so when you need one, it's hard to get one. And I just implore everybody, if you don't have an air doctor in your home, please just get one, because you never know when this is going to happen to you.
100%. I am with you there, Helen. And I'm also a little bit of a prepper.
Yeah.
I rather prepare for events and never need what I am asked. I have some proper, like, serious, what do you call these masks with
Yeah.
the serious ones, not the ones you get at Home Depot and things like that. And hopefully I'll never need to use them, but for the everyday, something like the AirDoctor, not only for disaster, because to be honest, if you compare the kind of living environments we live in right now to the living environments our ancestors lived in, it's a chronic disaster. It's chronically
It
polluted.
is.
So even if it's not something acute that hits us in the media and, oh, this is really horrible right now, the baseline is not that great. And to mitigate it is so important. We all want to not only live long, but we want to live well. And to take care of our lungs means to take care of so many of our systems. And Helen, we've covered so much ground today, from the power of clean air to the resilience it takes to run marathons, to run 100 miles. And if you could leave our listeners with one invitation, getting an air doctor aside, something they can begin doing today to reclaim a sense of sovereignty over their health and environment, what would that be? What's the one shift that comes to mind that you would like to offer?
I think it's very important to move. I think moving your body and getting outside, and I think movement is very important to our health. And so many people, it's so easy to be sedentary and not get outside and not get the steps in, or not go to the gym, or not take the walk. And so I think that moving, and also moving with community, is really important. Connecting with people outside of the screen is really important. So that's one of the things that I really love about running and the running community. You grab a friend, you go for a run, you're outside, and it really does so much for my mental well-being, clarity, energy, everything. And then in addition to that, I think for people at home thinking like, how can I really hack my health if they're really biohacking? I always say that you can take all the supplements and have all the gadgets, but always think about your foundation because that was me. I was that person. I was thinking I was doing the things and I was living the life and I was super fit and I had a low body fat percentage. Like I thought I was doing great. And then because I just wasn't covering the basics, my foundational needs for health, I fell apart. And so my one thing is look at your environment and just start pulling out the environmental toxins wherever you can.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you for sharing this, Helen. And for people who'd like to get in touch with you, also learn more about the company, the products, where can they do?
Sure. So you can follow us at AirDoctor on all social sites, and you can also follow me at Helen Christoni.
Excellent. Helen, thank you for your heart. Thank you for your leadership and also your breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively. And may we all remember that every inhale is an invitation to live more fully, more consciously, and more connected to what truly sustains us. Thank you for being with us today, Helen.
Thank you, Ariana, so much.